Welcome to the Impatient Entrepreneur Podcast, a show where we hear from entrepreneurs and business owners who are chomping at the bit to make their mark on the world. I'm your host, Lauren Quidar-Cockrell. Now, let's hurry up and get to the good stuff. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the show. Today, we have Mike Kaeding with us. He is the CEO of Norhart, and I cannot wait for him to share all about his company's mission, his journey to CEO, and all that good stuff. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit. Tell us about your business first. What do y'all do?
Yeah, at a high level, we design, build, and rent apartments, but we're really focused on driving down the cost of housing. See, we've been achieving about a 25-30% discount on the construction costs related to housing. But imagine what this means with time, because our dream is to reach a 50% discount. Imagine what that means. That means someday your rent or your mortgage payment could be half. And if we can achieve that, we can really make a meaningful impact in the societies that we're working for. So ultimately, really, our dream is to solve housing affordability.
I love that. How did that, has that always been the business's mission? Has that been an evolution of the business?
You know, for me, I always knew I wanted to make some kind of meaningful, positive impact in the world, but I didn't really know what that was. See, this business originally started as a family business, and I grew up with it, right? We were swinging hammers, picking up nails, sweeping. And in fact, my parents lost everything at one point. My dad was actually even kidnapped in Peru.
Oh, God.
Crazy side story. But I went off to college, and the one thing that I knew is that I didn't want anything to do with the family business. See, yeah, the reason that is that I didn't want people to think it was given to me. But deep down, I knew I wanted to make some kind of meaningful, positive impact in the world. And when I set my ego aside, I realized that I could take this small business, this advantage I had in life, take this small business and grow it to something much larger that could have that impact. If I just started from scratch, I probably couldn't reach the same level of impact that we can the way we are today. And so to summarize the answer is it was a journey. It was not just one day where we decided this is the mission, this is how we're improving the world. It was an evolution that I knew I eventually wanted to get to.
Cool. So the family business started, it was a construction business as a family business, and then it has evolved into this mission-driven company now with you at the helm.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. And how long have you been CEO of the company?
It's been about 10 years now. Yeah, when I got out of college, my dad and I worked together in the small business, and this was great. I mean, there's only like 10 staff members. And we built some buildings together, which was a lot of fun. We doubled the size of the company in those first couple of years. And then within the first couple of years, my dad unexpectedly passed away. So overnight, I went from partnering with my dad to now being CEO. And that was a severe struggle and severe challenge because a lot of people didn't think we had what it took to make it through. And there's a lot of challenging moments and stories through that process. But since then, we've grown substantially, and it's been a fun ride.
Yeah. When you had your initial resistance about being in the family business, and then you joined the family business, and then, unfortunately, your father passes away. Did you feel like more committed to the family business at that point? Where did you feel like you were sort of at a fork in the road of maybe wanting to leave or anything like that? Or did you double down into being a part of it?
Yeah, that first year after school, I was very conflicted. There was a lot of other cool things I wanted to do. My degrees in computer science with a minor in mathematics and management. And so I thought technology was the way to change the world. Or getting into investment banking maybe, or consulting of some kind. And there was a lot of really fun avenues that I was looking down. And so I worked for a number of businesses that first year, a lot of small startups as well. And so it really took me a year of wrestling with it. And thank you to my dad for being patient through that process. And after that year, I really came to the conclusion that this was the best path. And once I kind of got past that mental hurdle, got over my own ego, then I was 100% in.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Kudos to Dad. So now as a CEO, do you consider yourself an entrepreneur?
Well, yes, in many regards. For us, we're really trying to drive down that cost of construction. And if you look at the way construction has been done, it's been stuck in the stale process that it's been for hundreds of years. In fact, if you look at other industries over the past 60 years, industries like manufacturing have improved labor productivity by 760%. But during that same time period, construction's done nothing. And so we want to change that, the stale industry. And in order to change that, it requires constant innovation, constant change. One of the big things we did, which is uncommon for our industry, is we brought all of the work, all of the people under one roof in one company. See, if a construction company were to produce cars, you'd have a different company installing the windshield, a different company installing the door, and a different company installing the wheel. And of course, the wheel company, they would call you up and say, hey, I'm so sorry. I got delayed in another project. And now you'd be shut down for 2 weeks. See, the way manufacturing looks at us and says, you're crazy. And we respond with, this is the way it's always been done. And so we've got to crack that nut. And that requires thinking from an entrepreneur's perspective.
Okay, so my first official question, are you an impatient entrepreneur?
Yes, and maybe a little bit too much so at times. Because it's challenging. There's so many cool new avenues we can take and execute on. I think, well, especially the last couple of years, why not try it all? We went into precast concrete. Think the giant beams that hold up bridges. We can produce that now in our own manufacturing plant. We went and developed a wall panel manufacturing plant. We now have engineers and architects on staff. We have a sourcing and supply chain. We have employees in Mexico, China. We've got them all over the world. Wow. And that sounds great. Why not try everything? The problem, being a little bit too impatient, is that whenever you try something new, it could be the right thing, but initially it always gets harder before it gets easier. But another way, it actually always gets more expensive and more painful before it gets better than you could find elsewhere in the market. And the problem is, if you stack too many of these impatient things on top of each other, you create a situation where you've created a lot of pain for the organization, and that just brings everyone down. And so that's one of the recent challenges I've been faced with, is I did too much, too fast, and it created a lot of havoc as a result.
Gotcha. Absolutely. So, do you feel that your interest in technology and that part of your psychology, do you think that is helping you innovate a business that has not seen a lot of innovation over the last century or so?
Oh, absolutely. The one interesting challenge I've learned, though, because when we got in this, we thought, let's develop all of our own software. We actually built out a software development team.
Wow.
We built a lot of our own software. That creates problems and headaches as well.
Yes.
We even developed hardware and we have patents. What I realized, and this happens in construction too, there's lots of cool new technologies. What I realized is oftentimes the entrepreneur or even the software developer wants to create something because it's cool and interesting and could be really the next big thing. The problem is a lot of times those ideas are a solution looking for a problem. And that was a lesson I learned a number of years ago, is I really have to understand what is the core problem we're trying to solve. And in our case, in many instances, the solution to solving those underlying issues is not necessarily new technology. It can be other things. And one of the most important is who you hire and that system behind it.
Sure. Absolutely. Is there anything that you're particularly impatient about right now? Like the next nut you're going to crack, or anything like new services or projects or anything like that?
Well, the really big one for us right now is, for the last decade, interest rates have been very low. And And in the last year or two, interest rates have climbed. As a result, the capital markets have gotten choppy, let us say. Banks who are typically lending large amounts of money are still lending. They're just lending smaller amounts of money. And so because our costs are so low, we've been financed entirely with banks in the past. Now the banks have pulled back a little bit. We now have a gap that we have to fill, which means I've got to learn something new, which is how to build relationships and raise capital in the wider capital markets. And that has been round the clock, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday, every single week. But it's been amazing because I've learned more in the last 12 months in the whole world of capital raising than I would have ever have learned had we not been impatient and had to struggle through it. So it's been fun.
That feels familiar. So obviously a natural learner. How do you fuel yourself or educate yourself just in general as a leader and a business owner? I mean, are you a podcast guy? Do you read books or listen to books? Do you go to conferences, conventions, things like that? Like, how do you educate and inspire yourself?
Oh my, all the above. But I probably take it a little bit too extreme. I don't like to waste minutes. My dad died at a relatively young age, and it reminds me how short life really is.
Sure.
And I often ask myself the question, how do I want to spend the minutes I have here on earth? So I'm very thoughtful about that. But part of that is I've got to learn and grow and improve. So I get home more or less the same time every day, put the kids or play with the kids and then put the kids to bed to their nighttime routine. After that, I've got like a strict routine in my diet. But while I'm making my food, I'm usually watching a documentary just to learn more about the wider world. And after that, when I'm headed off to bed, I will regularly watch YouTube videos. It is amazing how much you can learn on YouTube. And that, I don't know, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it takes to fall asleep. Why waste that and not be learning during that time as well? Then I do a 15-mile run every Sunday.
Wow.
And during that run, I'm always listening to either podcasts or audiobooks. And any trip, any drive, or anytime mainly driving, I'll put on audiobooks and things that I can learn as well. On top of that, I'm doing conferences. I'll do educational classes and resources as well of things I want to master. Even take like master classes. I love finding people who are best in the world at what they do because they're so much better. We will fly people in from all over the world to come here for just a day or two, just so I can pick their brain to learn what they are a master about. One quick example is concrete. Basic, like there's nothing special about it, right? Oh, contraire. The people who are experts in concrete can make concrete do things that you didn't even know were possible. For example, you can create a concrete mixture that cleans itself.
Interesting.
So if the UV light hits it, the rain hits it, it'll actually wash away all the debris off of that concrete. And you don't learn that from just the average Joe on the street.
No.
You learn that from tying into the world's best people.
Love those curious people who just want to go like all in on their passion. I'm a little bit of a honeybee, so I don't know what that's like.
Love it.
Like, I'm just gonna bebop around to different flowers. Are there any books or podcasts or anything like that that have been particularly transformative to you that you want to recommend?
Oh, absolutely. One of the most important for me of all time is No Rules Rules by Reed Hastings. It is his story on Netflix, but one of the most important lessons, actually, it would be the most important lesson I've ever learned, and he touches on that book, is to hire the very best. I say the best, I truly mean the very best. We will fly people in from other states to come work with us and fly them home on the weekend. One of our staff members in 2007, Steve Jobs announces the iPhone. This is the brand new iPhone, the day it's announced, like this iconic moment. On that stage, Steve Jobs walks off the stage, and the following presentation Our employee walked on that same stage following Steve
Wow.
Jobs. It's that caliber of people. And see what most people think. They look at me at this point and say, Mike, that sounds expensive.
Yeah, that is the thought process. That's a little thought track that's kind of going across my brain right now.
And it is.
Yeah.
If you look at it on a cost per person basis, it is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But what most people fail to understand, and I certainly did when I was younger, is that the best people outperform the average by 2 to 5 to 10 times as much.
Wow.
So instead of looking at it as a cost per person basis,
Mm-hmm.
look at it as a cost per unit produced. And then your best people aren't your most expensive. Your best people are actually your biggest bargain.
That's great advice. I think particularly as folks are newer in business or you're kind of in that growth mode, and speaking from experience where you're thinking about your next hire or whatever, and it can be scary to make those pivotal hires. I think it's easy to hire certain task-oriented roles or okay, I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm gonna hire somebody to do that. But then, when it gets scary when you're hiring those strategic roles and those like more quote unquote expensive roles. But once you do that, it's just a whole other ball game for sure.
Oh, it changes your world. They unlock doors for you that you didn't know could be unlocked.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a practical side to it too. You can't continue to grow unless you've got people that are as good or preferably much better than you are.
Right. Yeah, I think we talked a minute ago about setting your ego aside. I think that's also a big moment where you realize I A, am not the best at everything, and B, I don't want to be. Like, I want to bring people in who are just the masters of their craft to really move us forward, and I'll just be back here doing something.
Exactly.
Rallying
Yeah.
the troops. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, you've already shared something to this nature, but can you tell us a moment in your business life where you really felt that rug get pulled out from underneath you, and you weren't sure how you were going to survive this moment in time, but now looking back, you realized it was one of the best things that could happen to you in the business?
Oh my gosh, it happens all of the time. In fact, I was talking to my uncle just yesterday, who is one of the largest developers in the Midwest.
Wow.
And he said, Mike, in my story, in my history, there were 6 points that we just about lost everything. And it's important for business leaders to remember that. Like, the world's best businesses all go through incredibly challenging times where you're not sure you're going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never been through that before, your thought process is, I'm a failure, I'm screwing up.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that's just part of the game. Literally everybody goes through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of my favorite examples is actually just after my dad passed away. We had a project that we were working on building, and the city council was not so sure I could do it. And I didn't understand at the time the importance of building relationships. So I made some relational mistakes at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And they eventually gave us permission to start construction. But during construction, they shut me down twice. And the second time they shut us down, they brought me into their city offices. And I can remember this like it is yesterday, sat us down and basically looked at me and said, Mike, you're not good enough.
Wow.
We don't think you can do this. And you need to hire somebody else to basically replace you. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to keep things together.
Yeah, kick me while I'm down, why don't you?
Yeah. It was terrible. And then we ended up hiring someone over the course of like 3 days because we weren't allowed to start again. And I had a staff that had to keep going.
Oh, wow.
That is the worst way to hire someone.
Yes.
But it was enough. It was enough to keep the city at bay because behind the scenes, we could do the work and let this person kind of rubber stamp things. I remember about a month or so before we were supposed to open, we had a water main pressure test and it failed. Somewhere in this 1,000-foot long pipe buried 15 feet in the ground, there was a pinhole water leak but we had no idea where. And my excavator is basically walking off the site saying, good luck, you're on your own. I'm pleading with him to stay. I get him to stay, and I have to stand there from sunrise to sunset every day. I'm in my fairly nice clothes, getting in there in the mud, looking for this leak, because otherwise he's leaving the site. We eventually find the leak, and the city staff came out a few days before we were supposed to open. And they looked at our building and they said, there is no way. You're not opening this building. We're not letting you, there's no way you're going to get this done in time. And I was stuck because I had people moving in just a few days. Where am I supposed to send them?
Yeah.
They've got families. They're expecting to make this their home. And we worked through the night, those few last days. And the last day, the city brought about a half a dozen inspectors for a half a day inspection. They looked at every nook and cranny of that building. At the very end, the head building inspector pulled me aside in the parking garage, and he said, Mike, I know we were hard on you, but honestly, looking at this building today, this is the nicest project that we've opened in our city.
It's like, I hope you're not trying to take credit for that, sir.
But that was really the moment I went from like, I don't know if I can do this, to starting to have some confidence in myself.
What do you think kept you going during that time? I mean, you're down, and then you get kicked down even further, and you're not really getting any encouragement. Otherwise, like what within you helped you persevere?
If you think about the alternative is to walk away. Walking away means the staff don't have a job. Maybe wind down the company. Like there are so many moments that you feel like you just want to walk away. But there's some internal motivation that you have to have, and I certainly have it for our business, the willingness to fight through it and stick with it and hope that you can do all that you need to do so you make it through the other end. And it's super stressful. It is so incredibly hard. But at the end of the day, like you wake up in the morning and you put one foot in front of another, day after day after day.
I mean, gosh, talk about feeling like you have a loss on your hands to feeling like you have this slam dunk win at the end. So kudos to you for sticking it out and doing it with so much hard work and grit. And I'm sure you felt like you were 10 feet tall after that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's like everything feels like it's falling apart and failing when you're running into big problems. And you're just like, try to fix things. And then usually, not always, usually there's some moment that everything just snaps into place.
Yeah.
And you have no idea when that's coming. You don't know how it's coming, but just snaps. You're like,
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
You got this.
I do know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my best. Okay. So, tell us about young Mike. And was there, when you were growing up, did you have a personality trait that people sort of made you feel like it was a weakness, but now as a leader, you realize that personality trait is really your superpower?
I would say this is still a weakness, even though it does give me superpowers. And that is that I get really focused on things. And it's to the point that like I'm hyper focused on the problem I'm solving, and I put blinders on, and I don't necessarily know or understand the impact I'm having on the people I care about and the life around me. And so it is hard on people like my wife and kids when I'm in this zone, this mode, or even my employees. But it is also a superpower, because when we've got a core issue that's got to get solved, it almost needs that level of focus and attention to actually move that past the goal line.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's not a common trait where someone can be so deeply focused on one thing and stick with it until it's done. A lot of people they'll give up or they get distracted or whatever. So I can certainly see the double-edged sword of it, but I would say that's anything. Like
Yeah.
I'm an empath. That serves me so well. It is also extremely painful at times. Like I'll just be sitting with people. I'm like, whoa. Someone is going through it right now. And I'm like trying to shake it off of me. I'm like, that is not my anxiety or my sadness or whatever it is. But it's just like, it's on you. And so anyway, but it's also a very powerful thing to have when I am trying to help other people and I can really sense their feelings and help them. And then on our work in PR and marketing, help them translate that into words. So
Because then you can build such a deep, meaningful relationship with those people where like I would struggle with that because I'm like, all right, what's the numbers? What's the issue? Let's just solve, let's move on. So there's a degree that I really envy that skill set that you have that I just don't at the same level.
Well, I envy your focus. So I was finishing something up yesterday. I was like, oh, stay strong. You're almost there. Like, picking up my phone and setting it down over and over again. Oh gosh, but it takes all different kinds of leaders. It takes all different kinds of skill sets. That's why we have teams. That's why we have consultants and all that, because if we were all great, no one would need anybody. Well, we're all great. If we were all perfect or ever great at everything, we wouldn't need anybody else. So
exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so what is one piece of advice that you can give our listeners today that they can make their lives stronger or better?
Yeah, the number one we've already talked about, which is to hire the best people. So I'll give you a second one. And that is anytime you start something new, you're going to be terrible at it. It's okay, right? In fact, they did this study of different participants. The first group, they were told, both groups were told to make clay pots. The first group was told to make the very best clay pot that you can. The second group was told to make as many clay pots as they could. And what they found is that the first group that just focused on making one good clay pot, but no iterations, that certainly their clay pot was good. And if you compare it to the first pots of the second group, it was way better than their first pots. But the interesting point is that the later pots of the second group were much better than the first. And so many of us, as we grow up, when we're kids, we're okay with being bad at things. We can't walk, we can't talk, we can't ride a bike. Nobody cares. We're okay. Something happens to us as we get older, and we start having this internal dialogue that says, I shouldn't do something unless I'm perfect at it. Or what are people going to think if I struggle and fail? But my greatest encouragement to you is to just realize that we're terrible to begin with. And that's okay. You just got to persevere through that, work through it, and keep practicing, growing, and improving. And that's the only way you get the other end and you have that true mastery over whatever you're trying to do.
That's such great advice. Do you ever manufacture that for yourself? Like purposely trying something new, knowing that you're going to be bad at it just to put yourself in that almost like a safe failure space?
That's a great idea. I don't manufacture anything like that, partly because within our business, we're doing that all of the time.
Sure.
Like there hasn't been a point in the last 15 years of being part of this business that I've ever felt like I know what I'm doing in that position. But what's interesting is if I look back 5 years, the struggles that were overwhelming 5 years ago are like, that's trivial. I have no idea why that bothered me.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's amazing how you build those muscles. I don't manufacture the safe failure spaces very often, but I do to a degree because the desire for perfection is very strong in me, and so I've done things like take tennis lessons or something where it's just like,
That's awesome.
I have no expectation to be good at this. I just want to be bad at it and enjoy learning something new in like, there's no repercussions other than if I might hurt myself, but other than that, the odds are low there too. but I have found that, putting myself in a situation like that really helps quell those perfectionist tendencies too. Just like, it's okay to fail and it can be fun and it's safe. And, it helps build the courage for when it does matter, where it's just like, I can bounce back from this. And so I agree. I encourage.
Love it. Love it.
I do want to, before we wrap up, I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit more about your affordable housing mission. Is there anything you want us to take away from that? Is there anything you want listeners to think about as they go forth in their work? As we think about, it is a crisis in our country, certainly, and in broader communities. So I'll let you take the floor for a moment if you like.
Yeah, that is our dream, to solve housing affordability. And I'd say that if you ever want to learn more about what we're doing in that space, to visit norhart.com. That's NORHART.com. Couple of interesting things. First is that we have a new investment platform where people can put their money into it and earn a rate of 10% back on their money, which is quite awesome that we have that all in line today. And then secondly, we have our own podcast called Zero to Unicorn. It's about the journey of small business growing to $1 billion scale and what that's been like. One of my favorite guests was Michael Usland, who's the originator and the executive producer of Batman.
Oh, wow.
And he, when he was young, was able to scrape the money together to buy the movie rights to Batman. And he thought this would be a slam dunk. The reality is, when he went to the movie studios, everyone rejected him.
Oh, wow.
In fact, he fought over that for 10 years. People thought he was crazy. But in the end, after that 10 years, he finally got through and was able to make the Batman movies. And really now he's the father of the modern dark and serious superhero movies. So really cool story.
That is cool. We'll pop all those links in the show notes for folks, because that sounds like stories we want to be paying attention to, and then of course supporting y'all's journey as you go forth in your mission. So, anywhere else you want people to connect online with you?
No, our website's the best place to start and go from there.
All right. Awesome. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you for sharing your heart and your mind with us. And I look forward to seeing what all you do.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Impatient Entrepreneur. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague and give us a 5-star review. You can also chat with us on Instagram or Facebook at The Impatient Entrepreneur Pod. Want to star on a feature episode? Head over to theimpatiententrepreneur.com to inquire. Thank you to the team at Kaeding & Co. for believing in me and bringing this podcast to life. And thank you to Carson Childers for mixing and editing this episode. I can't wait to see you next time.